This is Face the Nation, broadcasting live from the CNN IBN headquarters in New Delhi with Sagarika Ghosh.
Hi there, good evening. Yes, today is International Day of Older Persons and we're focusing tonight on a disturbing new study which says that 1 in 3 elderly persons in India is physically and verbally abused by their own children. The primary perpetrator of this abuse is the son. What explains the rise in abuse of elderly parents? Let's get you the findings of the study and then hear from our panelists.
उन्होंने ही हमें बेसहारा किया जिन्हें हम जिगर में बसाया करते थे.
Thrown out of his own house by his own kin, 80-year-old G.S. Bhatia had no option but to find solace in an old age home. Mr. Bhatia tells us how his own sons and daughter-in-law abused him, even refusing to give him food for days before abandoning him. 84-year-old Mr. Sahani also has a similar story of neglect and humiliation to tell.
मेरे बेटा आया अंदर, कहता उठो, उठ गया, उन्होंने 3-4 मेरे को चांटे लगा दिया. कि बहू बोलने लगी, मैं 15 साल आपको खाना खिला चुकी हूँ, अब मैं नहीं खिला सकती आपको रोटी.
Such shocking cases of abuse of the elderly is growing in India, claims a study done by an NGO. The study reportedly found that 1 in every 3 senior citizens is abused mainly by their own kin. In 56% of the cases, sons were the chief abusers, while in 23% cases, daughter-in-laws were the culprits.
One of the startling facts that came out was that the older people, 75% of them, were living with the abuser.
The situation remains grim as many continue to suffer in silence. Some shameful findings reveal 55% of those who were abused didn't report it. 80% elderly continued suffering to save family honor. Madhya Pradesh was the state with highest abuse, followed by Assam, UP and Gujarat. India has over 100 million senior citizens, and with the UN saying that by 2050 there could be more than 300 million senior citizens, it is about time we think of how to sensitize our youth to stop such cases of abuse. In New Delhi, Meenakshi Upreti.
So on International Day for Older Persons, we're asking, why are the elderly being abused by their own children? Why are elderly parents being verbally and physically abused? Let's talk in the first part of the program about why this is happening, and in the second part of the program, we'll talk about possible solutions. Joining us tonight, Matthew Cherian, CEO of HelpAge India. We also have Mr. B.R. Sahani, senior citizen, who is with us, who has himself suffered abuse at the hands of his 3 sons, and Adab Singh Kapoor, Supreme Court lawyer, someone who does a number of pro bono cases for the elderly and on behalf of HelpAge. And we also have Akhila Shivadas, Director of the Centre for Advocacy and Research, someone who was part of the Pension Parishad, which recently launched an agitation to ask for a universal pension for the poor elderly, believing that self-sufficiency is the way to guarantee dignity. Let me come to you, Matthew Cherian. Very horrifying findings in this study that 1 in 3 of elderly in India are abused by their own children. In 56% cases, the son is the primary perpetrator. Why is this happening? What are the reasons for this?
There are many reasons. One is there's been a huge population explosion of the elderly. Today we are about 100 million elderly. The census also says family size has dropped to 5.1. This is a city survey. This has been in 20 cities, and in all cities bulk of the cases have been over property. So children want the property before the parents die. In the past generation, they used to wait for the will of the father after he passes away to get the property. Now children want it quick and before the parents die, and the only way to do it is through abuse and ejecting the family out from the house.
Ejecting the parent out.
And after that they get into an old age home and they can have the property all for themselves. Primarily this has been the factor.
It's property. But could it also be urban living, the stresses and strains of urban living, that often a young couple can't adjust to an elderly person? It's not necessarily perhaps abuse. Is it misunderstanding? Could that also be the case?
The urban pressure is possibly there, but we have found many cases where they have asked the parents to stay in the storeroom while the rest of the family lives in the bedrooms. So parents are then in a small room, and in some parts of Delhi I have seen people spending their time in the balcony. They are not even allowed into the house. They are living their entire life in the balcony rather than in the house. So this can't be said to be family pressure.
It's not family pressure or misunderstanding. It is straightforward abuse. B.R. Shahani साहब, आप हमारे साथ हैं. आप इस वक्त ओल्ड एज होम में रहते हैं. आप हमें बताइए क्या हुआ आपके साथ. आपने हमारी स्टोरी में बताया कि आपके बेटे ने आपको चांटा मारा, आपकी बहू ने कहा कि हम आपको और खाना नहीं देंगे. क्या हुआ आपके साथ?
फैक्ट इज दिस, एक तो बच्चे का काम बहुत ज्यादा था, ड्रिंक ज्यादा करने लग गया काम ना होने की वजह से. दूसरा ड्रिंक करता था और मेरी मिसेस का इंतकाल हो गया हुआ था, अकेला था, काम था नहीं उनका, और वो कहते थे ये हमारे के ऊपर बोझ है. तो ट्रीटमेंट मेरे साथ ठीक नहीं करते थे.
उन्होंने कहा कि आप बोझ हैं उनके ऊपर.
बोझ हैं. कुछ ऐसे बातें कही कि जो मैं बर्दाश्त नहीं कर पाया. उसके बाद मैंने, मेरी बेटी है, मेरा बहुत ख्याल करती है, उसको मैंने टेलीफोन किया, बेटा ये बात है. तो ये बीच वाले लड़के की बात कर रहा हूं. तो सबसे छोटे बेटे के हाथ चला गया. उसकी बहू ने कहा कि जी आप मंदिर के आगे सो जाओ और सोचो सुबह आपने कहाँ जाना है. ठीक है, सुबह उसके भी हाथ चला गया.
मतलब आपको बाहर कर दिया. तो शहानी साहब, मैं आपसे पूछना चाहूंगी, क्या ये संपत्ति की वजह से हुआ इस तरह आपके साथ? क्या वो आपका घर चाहते थे? क्या आपको घर से निकालना चाहते थे?
संपत्ति की वजह से नहीं हुआ. संपत्ति तो उन्होंने मेरी 3 बकवा दी. नोएडा में प्लाट लिया, मेरा हाउसिंग सोसाइटी.
आपने संपत्ति उनके नाम पर कर दिया?
नहीं की नहीं, लेकिन बकवा दिया, ये बेच दो इसको, ये कर दो. फिर आखिर में निकला मेरा रोनी में सोसाइटी का मकान. मैंने कहा चलो जी वहां पे चलते हैं. बीवी मेरी चली गई, खत्म हो चुकी. कहते जी हम क्या करेंगे, ये करें, हम तो नहीं जा सकते. कोई मेरे साथ नहीं जा. वहां का जो प्रेसिडेंट था उसके अंदर बेईमानी आ गई कि ये तो अकेला रह गया.
सो बेसिकली आपके साथ ये हुआ कि उन्होंने आपको घर से निकाल दिया और अब आप ओल्ड एज होम में रहते हैं.
जी.
Is this what happens, Adab Singh Kapoor, to most elderly, that they are thrown out of their homes because the sons simply don't want to keep them due to property related issues?
See, the bone of contention is always property in most of the cases. Now the same thing would not have happened to him had he had property with him.
If he had property in his own name.
If he had property with him, his children would not have dared to disinherit him, disown him and ask him to go to the old age home. Because he lost his property with him, that's why they could do whatever they have done. And from my limited experience, from my experience from getting all these cases on old age people, I find property is the bone of contention. You have the children, they want the elders to will the property or give the property or relinquish the property in favor of the children. Also, they also want the other sibling not to get anything, and they pressurize their parent in order that they relinquish their share in the property or disinherit the other child. So when this happens, and after that the parent has no property left with them, and then they are abused.
Right. So but what explains the abuse? What explains the physical abuse? Because if it's a dispute over property, then why not simply sort it out in a court or challenge the property in a court? Why the physical abuse?
See,
why the verbal and physical abuse?
Because the elderly, they have the property with them. Now the children, the 5 children, 3 children, 4 children, 2 children, so they want the property. So once they get hold of the property, then they feel that they have no other use left in this world. So then the abuse starts.
So it's a real breakdown of the family, isn't it? It's a complete
Absolutely.
breakdown of the
The value
ultimate relationship of love, of compassion. Really nothing of that is left. It's all boiled down to a materialistic relationship. But let me bring in Akhila Shivdas. Akhila Shivdas, you are in the Pension Parishad. You were advocating the universal pension for elderly because, as you rightly pointed out at that time, the poor elderly need that pension of 2,000 rupees per month in order for them to get a dignified life. Do you believe that ultimately it's pension, it's economic self-sufficiency that guarantees old age dignity?
No, I think we need to take into consideration the fact that the kind of people that were rallying around for the pension are people who have been firstly in the informal sector, and secondly they've really worked their bone hard all their life.
Carry on.
And sort of given in and been very productive, and I think this is the time for it's like a payback time for them. They have sustained all the sort of all the economic activities that really run the nation. I mean, they are the engines of work and growth. They are the real engines of growth, and I think the pension is only partly sort of recognizing the fact that they need to be given security in their old age.
Right. Let me just come to you, Matthew Cherian. We would just to pick up the fact that the elderly need to be given security. Is it because the family has completely broken down, or have all the bonds of love and compassion completely broken down?
See, today we presented this report, UNFPA and HelpAge, to the President of India. This report says countries like India are not investing in social security systems at all. And the fact of the matter is, in India, less than 100 days of employment is available for most people. So most people do not have enough savings to last in their old age. And at the same time, if we have no pensions, no provident funds, then what happens in the old age? In the old age, it is complete misery. So as a result of it, you will fall prey to abuse, you will fall prey to other problems.
Is there a mentality that is continuing, that you don't save, you don't have a pension because you think that your children will look after you? That you think that your son particularly will look after you? Is that a common perception still? Because it's the son that's turning around and saying, and not looking after.
Well, that is true, but the elderly also are very sensible these days. They also know that they have the property, they should keep their property in hand, because they also know that the children, you can't trust them anymore.
Right. So, Shahani साहब, अगर आपके पास घर होता, अपना घर होता, अगर आपके पास संपत्ति होती, तो क्या आप समझते हैं कि ऐसा बर्ताव करते आप आपके साथ?
नहीं.
See, there you go.
नहीं करते. वो बल्कि मेरे साथ रहते और मेरा ऑनर करते हैं. अब भी बड़ा लड़का मेरी टेलीफोन करता है, बहुत प्यार करता है, लेकिन मेरे को ये नहीं पता कि वो कहाँ रहता है.
वो आपसे मिलना नहीं चाहता?
नहीं, मिलता है, उसके बच्चे मिलते हैं, प्यार करते हैं, लेकिन जो बहू है वो नहीं मिलती. वो मेरे को अपने घर में भी बुलाना नहीं चाहती, दूसरे रिश्तेदारों को बुलाती है. मेरे को पता भी नहीं है कि उसका घर कहाँ पे है. और जिस लड़के ने मेरे को कहा था, मारा था, उसकी डेथ हो गई है पिछले साल.
जिस लड़के ने आपको मारा था,
उसकी डेथ हो गई है. और मैं उसके घर में 3 साल 4 साल के बाद गया हूं, जब उसकी डेथ हुई है. अब ये पोजीशन है. पिछले 2 महीने में उसने बहू मेरे लिए बेटी की शादी की है. वो मेरे सन ला के पास गई है, जी मैंने बेटी की शादी है.
मेरे आपके पास नहीं आई, आपके पास नहीं.
मेरे अरे सुनिए, सन ला ने कहा है कि देखो मैं नहीं चल सकता जब तक वो बुजुर्ग हैं घर में.
जी,
बड़े वो हैं.
जी, पर वो बहू आपके पास नहीं आई. That's what you're trying to say. You wanted to come in on that?
Yes, I just wanted to point out the issue of daughter-in-laws. The daughter-in-laws and the family, what they do is, like the cases which I'm getting, they initiate 498A cases, which is cases of dowry and cruelty, and in those cases the entire family of the husband gets implicated, which includes the elderly parents and the entire family. Now these people, the entire family has to go to the CAW cell, which is crime against women cell, and the lengthy proceedings when they're trying to settle the dispute. Then they have to get an anticipatory bail, then further to that a bail, and then quashing petition in the High Court. So there's a lot of hassle happening, and then finally the matter gets settled down. But prior to the settlement, there's so much of rigmarole and so much of anxiety which they have to face.
Right.
Especially the elderly.
Do you go along with that? It's the 498A cases that are being brought against the old people?
No, 498 cases are there. False accusation is there. Our research says 53% of the time, son is the main abuser. 23% of the time, it's a daughter-in-law.
56% of the time, the son is the main abuser.
And very often, the serials portray that the daughter-in-law is the main accuser.
But it could be because the elderly stay with the son. They don't stay with the daughter.
Yeah. The son abuses, the daughter-in-law may be also supporting and
yes, absolutely,
in cahoots with the son. But at the same time, the son is the one who commits the verbal abuse, who commits the physical abuse. All that is done by the son.
And this interesting finding here that 86% in fact 55% don't report these cases.
Yes, reporting is always to relatives, close relatives, or to some friends whom they can trust. It is never to outside agencies.
Why don't they report?
See, there is this family honor, there is this family respect which has to be protected. People don't like to go out, and even in HelpAge, when we go to them, they don't come out and tell the cases. Many cases they reconcile themselves. After reporting the case, in the first 2 weeks, they both talk to each other and reconcile the cases. They never complain outside.
So there is no culture of going to an agency or complaining or going to the law, nothing like that. You wanted to come?
Yeah, they don't come to lawyers directly, but that's why institutions like HelpAge, they would rather go to an institution like HelpAge. Like yesterday I got a case in which the father was really abused by his son. But the father came to me and he said, I just want him to become alright. Then I gave him advice and I said, you file a complaint, etc., etc. He said, but मेरा बेटा ही ultimately, मैं चाहूँगा नहीं कि उसको कुछ problem हो.
शहानी जी, आप इस वक्त ओल्ड एज होम में रहते हैं, क्या आप वापस जाना चाहेंगे आपके परिवार के पास? अगर आपको बुलाया उन्होंने, आप नहीं जाना चाहेंगे?
ना, क्योंकि बच्चे बड़े हो चुके हैं, पोते पोतियां मेरे बड़े हो चुके हैं. आपने जाते हैं, मैं घर में जाके क्या करूंगा? यहाँ पे मेरे को 24 बहन भाई मिले हुए हैं और मेरा टाइम गुजरता है. मैंने देखा है कि जो अकेला बूढ़ा आदमी हो जाता है वो घर में नहीं रह सकता. वेयर दे स्पेंड दी टाइम, उसके पास टाइम गुजारने के लिए टाइम नहीं है.
तो आप पहले भी कह रहे थे कि आप इस वक्त स्वर्ग में हैं और आप नर्क में नहीं वापस जाना चाहते हैं.
बिल्कुल स्वर्ग में हूँ, नर्क में नहीं जाना चाहता हूँ. फिर वही बातें होंगी, एक आदमी के पास पैसा नहीं है, कुछ बात नहीं है, वो एक बोझ है. और सबसे बड़ी बात थोड़ी सी अर्ज करूं कि जिस घर में बेटी नहीं है वो घर नहीं है. अब भी मेरी बेटी मेरी मदद कर रही है. होम में हूं, मेरी 2,500 रुपये महीने की मैं दवाई है मेरी. 1500 रुपया गवर्नमेंट मेरे को देती है पेंशन. 2000 रुपया बिजली मेरे को भेजती है ताकि उसके साथ में गुजारा कर सकूं.
Right. That's a very, very poignant statement coming out there from Mr. Shahani. In a culture that worships the son, he says his 3 sons did not look after him. One of them hit him. They threw him out of the house. They constantly told him that he was a burden on them. Now it is his daughter. She is his Shravan Kumar. She is looking after him in his old age. Let's take a short break and come back and talk about solutions. What can be done so that we have a compassionate society and much more facilities in social security and infrastructure for the elderly. Today is International Day for Older Persons, and we are talking about a shocking new study which shows that 1 in 3 elderly Indians are being abused by their own children. Let's bring you some feedback that has come in to us on Twitter. CP Chindia writes, with the influence of Western lifestyle engulfing younger generation, life has become cruel for the elderly in India. CP Chindia has put in that feedback into us. And on IBNlive.com, we also have some feedback coming in. India is following Western culture with growth in nuclear families due to rise in urbanization. Old people will be increasingly isolated in coming times. Vinet85 has put this into us at IBNlive.com. Let me come to you with the numbers of elderly. 315 million elderly will be there by 2050. 88 million elderly were there in 2009. Big numbers. We are not a country of youth. We are a rapidly aging society. So given this situation, do we need much more infrastructure to deal with the elderly? I know your organization, HelpAge, is doing tremendous work. What would you say are the basic infrastructural needs?
The basic infrastructural needs is actually social infrastructure, which is health insurance for all, pensions for all, and we also need a system by which we have sensitization and communicating to our children on values. This basic infrastructure has to be put into place.
Health infrastructure, pension and communication with the next generation. Akhila Shivdas, there is of course in fact the Pension Fund Regulatory and Development Authority bill, the PFRDA bill, which is at the moment there calling for pension reform. Do you agree with that bill, that might actually incentivize people to save for their old age, or do you believe it has to be a state and a government solution, that it has to be the state that has to give out this pension of 2,000 rupees a month?
No, it has to be primarily the state. You're dealing with a very vulnerable section of community. You're dealing with probably 55% or even more of that being women, and many of them being widowed early, being forced into destitution early. So we are looking at very, very difficult communities, living on the edge, so to speak. So there's no question.
But Akhila Shivdas, but the government says it's going to cost 2 lakh crore per annum to actually have this universal pension. That has been the argument against the universal pension, which you are demanding.
No, but there are many, there are many, Sagarika, there are many ways of raising that money. We all know that there are many ways of raising the money. Money is a big bogey. No doubt it is serious and we have to find ways of raising it, but it's not. It can't be sort of, so exaggerated as to abandon a whole section of people. And you are talking about an aging society. Large parts of India are going to very soon face that problem. And we already know the level of abuse that is going on. And we also know that there is a cycle of abuse.
Right.
We're not just dealing with just abuse at the old age. We're really dealing with a very vicious cycle of abuse.
It's a vicious cycle of abuse. Let me bring you in here. Is the answer also not only the pensions but also perhaps old age homes? The reality is that our families are breaking down.
That's
so do we need many more old age homes, services for the poor, elderly? Do we also need in fact a whole range of infrastructure for the elderly?
So we have this Maintenance and Welfare of Parents and Citizens Act 2007.
Maintenance and Welfare of Parents and Senior Citizens Bill. We have some information on that. I'm going to ask my producer to just bring that up.
So because they have catered to the provisions of providing for the old age homes and recreational facilities and welfare facilities.
They have provided.
They have provided. The implementation is the key, because they have provided for provisions.
They have provided one in every district, and they provided this for 626 districts, but the Planning Commission hasn't given any money for old age homes. As a result of it, not even a single old age home has been built in any of the 626 districts.
Right, as has been said to me on Twitter as well, the elderly are not a vote bank. So I suppose the government is simply not incentivized. But you believe that some progress is being made?
It is being made, because see, the new legislation which have come about, the Domestic Violence Act 2005, the Maintenance Act 2007, they go a long way in ameliorating the plight of the elderly.
They do go.
They do go. But the implementation, you have the procedural lags, which is why there is more harassment and there's still more abuse.
Right.
Because they do provide for 60 days. 60
right.
days
So
from
implementation of the Maintenance and Welfare of Parents and Senior Citizens Bill, economic self-sufficiency, that is the key for dignity in old age.
It is an act, not a bill.
The act, in fact, it is an act that needs to be implemented. Chahani साहब, आप हमें बताइए, आप अभी ओल्ड एज होम में रहते हैं, ये क्या आपको अच्छा लगता है इस ओल्ड एज होम में? क्या आप ये बोलेंगे कि और जो बुजुर्ग हैं उनको भी ये ओल्ड एज होम का ऑप्शन देखना चाहिए?
देखिए जी, दूसरे ओल्ड एज होम का तो नहीं मैं कह सकता, जहाँ पे मैं रहता हूँ इतना ही कह सकता हूँ, मैं स्वर्ग में रह रहा हूँ। जो इसको चलाने वाले हैं जैन साहब, वो इतना कुछ कर रहे हैं इसके लिए,
राइट,
कि हमें और कहने की जरूरत नहीं पड़ती कि ये हमारे लिए करो,
राइट।
इतना
तो आप बहुत खुश हैं और आप अपने परिवार के पास नहीं वापस नहीं जाना चाहते?
नहीं जाना चाहते।
So perhaps this is a portent for the future, that with families breaking down, with this kind of cruelty on elderly parents for property, perhaps old age homes and other infrastructural facilities, social security, pensions, the state, the private sector as well has to come in, because we are a rapidly aging society. There will be 315 million elderly in our country by 2050, I beg your pardon. Thank you very much indeed, Matthew Cherian, B.R. Shahani Sahab, Adab Singh Kapoor, Akhila Shivdas. Thanks very much indeed for joining us. Is our crimes against elderly parents rising? Are the elderly being abused by their own children? What are you telling us? 84 have got some information obviously about this and are agreeing that yes, it is. Thanks for watching.